Welcome everyone. Good morning ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Bharati Vidyapeeth family and BVIMSR, I, Dr. Uma Durgude, extend a warm welcome to our dignitaries, Ms. Cook from South Africa, our Regional Director Vilas Rao Kadam, Director BVIMSR Dr. Anjali Kalse, and to all the participants and faculty members attending this international symposium on trade, commerce, bilateral relations, and opportunities between India and South Africa. I hope that you all are safe and sound, and we pray that this coming new year will bring hope and joy to our friends. In the coming days, we'll definitely witness a surge in global business and trade as the world limps back to normalcy. The existing business paradigms are being redefined post COVID 19, and new trade alliances will have to cope up with these new paradigms. India, which is fast emerging as an economic powerhouse, understands that it means to strengthen its business and trade with other countries, thus stimulating and contributing to world trade. One of the countries with which India has sound bilateral trade and cultural ties is the Republic of South Africa. Friends, the bilateral relations between the Republic of India and the Republic of South Africa have grown stronger since the end of apartheid in South Africa in both countries have since developed close strategic, cultural, sports and economic ties. India and South Africa also share an extensive energy partnership. Ties have further been solidified with South Africa's 2011 acceptance into the BRICS group. Both the countries, being members of BRICS, have an important role to play in global affairs, particularly trade and commerce. This symposium thus assumes great significance in light of the contribution that both South Africa and India can make to contribute to the global economic recovery post-COVID-19. This symposium will deliberate on trade and business opportunities between South Africa and India. Our two speakers, which are closely working with South African consulate in propagating trade and commerce between the two nations, can give valuable insights to the challenges and business opportunities between these two emerging economies. Before we move further, let me acquaint you all to the flow of the symposium. We begin with the inaugural address delivered by Dr. Anjali Kalsi, Director, BVIMSR, which is the introduction of our two eminent speakers from South Africa. After the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. Participants can pose their questions in the chat box, which will be taken care by the moderator. The symposium will culminate with summarization and vote of thanks delivered by Mr. Neil Ramesh of ABLE Foundation. Certificates will be issued to participants who will attend and fill the feedback form. I now invite our director, Dr. Anjali Kalsi, to inaugurate the session by her speech. Thank you. Anjali ma'am?
Hello.
Yeah, ma'am, please welcome ma'am.
Yeah. Very good morning and warm welcome to distinguished guests from different countries, faculty members, research scholars, students. Warm welcome to you all for the International Symposium on Trade, Commerce, Bilateral Relationship between India and South Africa. I think this is an apt time where we are going up with this symposium. And if we are talking about the background of India and South Africa, if you look back, there are many commonalities and good history behind this relationship, bilateral ties. And if we look back, dating back several centuries, you will find that it is anchored in common ideas, interests, and icons like Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. In between, yes, I agree. There were relationship between India and South Africa. But then you will realize and you will understand that both the nations served as the colonies, And there are many similarities between India and South Africa. And if we look at the bilateral trade, it has grew exponentially to around 12 billion so far, and it is growing on. So I think we have also experienced joint military sessions. We have also have ambassadors at, I mean, that much good relationship we are maintaining, and we are having ties with everything. Even in sports, we are having the tie-ups, and the UFC team and Indian team, they are going to the countries, respective countries, playing, and this is how with respect to bilateral and the bilateral trade and the commerce, sports, each and every area you take, the relationship is growing. In between, it was strained, but then eventually. And quite supporting kind of a relationship, quite large kind of a cooperation that is going on, and we are experiencing. So there are various opportunities also, like both the countries are now working to boost the trade volumes over next 5 years, and to reach 20 billion US dollar, that 1.3 trillion rupees. So it's a it's a very unique kind of relationship, and it is very important that from a very broad scale it is going on. And here this is a time where even the institute and universities are also thinking that yes, we should go on with this. Is the first step towards developing the relationship between the South Africa and India in the education sector. Now here at this juncture, I feel it is important to talk about, even we talked about little bit about the relationship between South Africa and India. But when there are guests who are logged in for this particular symposium, I would like to tell them about Bharati Vidyapeeth also at this juncture. Bharati Vidyapeeth is big name in the education industry, and we have this umbrella of Bharati Vidyapeeth is having around 180 institute plus, and it is accredited A-grade university, and we are the Vidyapeeth. We can proudly say that yes, we are a part of Bharati Vidyapeeth, and the Bharati Vidyapeeth Institute of Management Studies and Research is started way back in 1984 in Mumbai, and then there is no looking back. We have also grown exponentially from we have started with the 60 strength, and this year I'm very happy to announce that we are having the 180 strength for our master's degree, that is MBA. And there are many accolades to Bharati Vidyapeeth's BVMSR's credit. And recently we have done the MOU with Uzbekistan. We are going on doing MOUs with the different universities from different countries. Basically, give students the exposure about international exposure, about how the trade is happening, how the culture, and because ultimately now the world is becoming a global village, and now I will say it's a global village, and every citizen, irrespective of the country, should know the norms of and how to deal in international market. So objective only. What we are here in BVMSR, we are doing that. We are having the various program under the MOU with the different universities, where recently I would like to quote, when we did the MOU with the Uzbekistan, there we are having faculty exchange, student exchange, and the collaborative research, various areas where we are cooperating. So I think this is a very apt time where even the South Africa if everything, when we are talking about so much cooperation between the two countries, why not between, universities? So this is a high time now that we should think on having online session, guest session with the South African universities. And I hope this particular symposium will be the first step towards this kind of collaboration. And as we have discussed, and I just briefed you about the brief about the bilateral ties between India. So that is also growing, and we has, as both the countries shares the same history, wherein we call Mahatma Gandhi as the father of nation. I know Nelson Mandela is the father of nation for South Africa. So having similar background, similar kind of ideologies, and the beliefs and values, there is a long way ahead to go. And I think we have already taken one step towards it, and possibly this is a good time, and to move ahead. And I hope this further, as we grow and as we go ahead, these ties will be much more strengthened, and there will be eagerly waiting, there will be some collaborations, some exchange of ideas through that particular collaboration will happen. So I again welcome you all, the guests, to Bharati Vidyapeeth Institute of Management Studies and Research, basically, and of course for this particular international symposium on trade, commerce, bilateral relations. The opportunities, wherein I think this particular symposium will throw a light on various aspects of the opportunities, how this particular relationship can be strengthened, and how there is a road ahead. So that this particular symposium, I am expecting, will guide us, and with that guidance, to move forward with the South Africa. With this, once again, I welcome all the guests from the bottom of my heart, all the faculty members and students, to this particular important international symposium. And maybe there will be many takeaways at the end of the day. So here, I would like to wish all the best, and we are eagerly waiting speak and give us some maybe knowledge and some value addition from this symposium with respect to our bilateral relationships and opportunities between India and South Africa. So thank you very much, and wish you all the best. Welcome once again for this symposium. Thank you. Thank you very much
for your inaugural speech and for your wishes too. I now request Professor Makarin Pol to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Dr. Uma. In the just concluded BRICS summit, Honorable PM of India, Narendra Modi, has reiterated that BRICS would play a very important part in reviving the globe, as it contributes to 32% of world's GDP and comprises of 40% of the total world population. We therefore believe that this symposium is very, very apt for the situation. Now let me take this privilege of introducing our two esteemed speakers from the Republic of South Africa, Mrs. Andrea Kuhn and Mrs. Andrea Kuhn has secured her Bachelor's of Civil Law, BLC, Baccalaureus Leges Civilis from University of Pretoria, South Africa. She has also secured Bachelor of Laws, Baccalaureus Legum from University of Pretoria. She has undergone programs. Prominent among them are course for junior managers from Institute for Training Commission for Administration, South Africa, Public Management Development Program from South Africa Management Development Institute, Leadership and Economic Development Program from Civil Service College, Singapore. Her career history is exhaustive and very impressive, right from 1991 to the present times. She has held many important offices. She was Diplomatic Training and Desk Officer, South Africa from 1991 to 1994, Vice Consul at the South African Consulate General in USA, 1994 to 1998, Desk Officer, Non-Alignment Movement, 1998, Private Secretary to the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Department of Foreign Affairs, South Africa, 1998 to 2008, Counselor Political at the South African Embassy, Berlin, Germany, from 2008 to 2012, Deputy Director in the Office of the Deputy Director General Americas and the Caribbean from July 2012 to March 2013, Deputy Director in the Office of the Deputy Director General Multilateral from August 2012 to October 2014, South and Central Asia, Department of International Relations and Cooperation, South Africa, November 2014 to December 2019. Presently, she is Consul General, South African Consulate General, Mumbai, India, with consular districts Maharashtra, Gujarat, Goa, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Kerala. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are very much audible, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Dean Hall. Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Sir, Dr.
Yes,
Cole,
sir.
you're
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, our next speaker is Mr. Dean Hoff, Council Economic, the South African Consulate General, Mumbai. Mr. Dean Hoff has been with the South African Department of Trade and DTI since 2009. He is the foreign economic representative from the DTI. He holds an undergraduate degree in economics and business management with an MBA in international business. Prior to assuming his current position in Mumbai, he served in the Investment South Africa division, Invest South Africa. At Invest South Africa, he was responsible for investment promotion in the service sector, which includes oil and gas, infrastructure, film and ICT-enabled industries, with a focus on BPS. As part of his service, he has also sat on numerous and diverse committees. Invest South Africa promotes South Africa as a trade and investment oil and gas sector, with a focus on servicing aspects of the oil and gas industry, and works closely with the Saldanha Bay SCZ, which has been earmarked as an oil and gas servicing hub for the east and west coast of Africa. In conducting its activities, Invest South Africa works with all relevant stakeholders, including the South African Oil and Gas Alliance. Invest South Africa is responsible for the promotion of South Africa as a credible BPO destination, which includes the ability to offer services in the shared services and LPO verticals, key source markets in the Kingdom and Australia. Additionally, Mr. Hoff was a member of Operations PICESA Delivery Unit tasked with supporting marine transport and manufacturing activities within the ocean economy. Mr. Hoff, in addition, served as an alternative director on the board of Oil and Gas Alliance. Presently, Mr. Hoff is accredited to the Consulate General of the Republic of South Africa in Mumbai as Council Economic Affairs, with a primary responsibility of promoting South African exports into Maharashtra, Goa, Gujarat, Telangana, and most of the southern Indian states. Firstly, also the attraction, support, and promotion of Indian investment into South Africa. Welcome, Mr. Hoff. I now request our two esteemed speakers to take over. Thank you.
From the cradle of humankind, we are kind humans. Our humanity is not in one special person. It's in all of us. In our name. Jan Hendrik, and in you, Katuchero.
So the video is, we could not see the video.
Okay, let me try again.
From the cradle of humankind, we are kind humans. Our humanity is not in one special person. It's in all of us. It's in our names. It's in Musa, in Aisha, Jan Hendrik, and in you, Katuchero. This is who we are. Abantu. people with open arms for doors. We say, Sawubona, Reting, come in. South Africa, surrounded by homegrown greatness, fathered by compassion and openness. Nature is our mother. We have our mother's nature. We are always there for each other. Because there's no part where one of us ends and the other begins. We are all connected. Let's visit each other, know each other, exchange journeys, and build more stories. Nathi sibe abantu, njengabanye abantu. Because it's only when we share with each other that we truly grow. We are in a good place. We, the people, make South Africa home of humanity.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Kadam, the Regional Director of the Navi Mumbai campus, Dr. Anjali Kalse, the Director of the BVI MSR, the members of the faculty, the students and the scholars, good morning. It is a great honor to spend a Saturday morning with young entrepreneurs and the future business leaders of this world. And we want to thank you also for giving us the opportunity to present to you South Africa today as a destination of choice. If it is as a business opportunity in trade and investment, or if it's your tourism destination of choice, we hope that today we can be able to present our beautiful country to you. And it's therefore also apt that we have presented to you in the introductory page the photo that was taken earlier this week when President Ramaphosa opened the third International Investment Conference in Johannesburg. And as you will note, the theme of the investment conference this year was accelerated economic growth by building partnerships. And it's also with India as a friend and a partner that we want to build this partnership and grow and strengthen our relations. By way of introduction, when we talk about relations, maybe we have to state that South Africa places great value on its relations with India. It is a strategic partnership that has a solid foundation of strong historical links, fraternal ties, which is cemented by the building blocks of a vibrant commercial and people-to-people relations. India was a very strong supporter of the fight against apartheid. It was also the first country to bring this matter of apartheid South Africa to the agenda of the United Nations. It was also very active through international organizations such as the Non-Aligned Movement. India was therefore one of the first countries to recognize democratic South Africa. And in November 1993, formal diplomatic relations were established between our two countries. You can also see there in the quote by former President Mandela that South Africa is humble and recognize and appreciate the huge contribution that India has played, and specifically in the icon of Mahatma Gandhi, because as you mentioned before, we share two of the world's icons and we share the values and we recognize their contribution. Bilateral relations between South Africa and India evolved and matured, and in March 1997, during the state visit of former President Mandela to India, the Red 4 Declaration was signed together with Prime Minister Shri Deve Gowda. It was the culmination of the support and solidarity between the people and the leadership of the two countries. The Red 4 Declaration contained the aspirations and the shared values of Afro-Asian solidarity and has given rise to the successful and enduring partnership that has consolidated into the strategic partnership. Diplomatic relations are managed through two formal structures. The one is at a senior official level, the Foreign Office consultations that meets annually, and the last meeting was held in October 2019 in Pretoria. The next meeting is planned for March 2021 to be held in New Delhi. The 10th round of the Joint Ministerial Commission was held in January this year in New Delhi and is co-chaired by the two foreign ministers of both countries. South Africa and India also have signed several agreements, MOUs and declarations to expand and strengthen cooperations in numerous sectors between the two countries. The most recent one was the Visa Simplification Agreement that was concluded in January during the JMC. And other notable ones was the establishment of the Gandhi Mandela Artisan Skills Center in South Africa. And under negotiation and close to finalization is an agreement on cooperation in higher education. And I fully support the comments by Dr. Kalse earlier that we need to cooperate much closer also on an academic level. The focus of this cooperation agreement will be on skills development, capacity building, scholarship, and as you have critically highlighted as well, closer cooperation between the two academia of our countries. These formal bilateral structures also have several subcommittees in the various fields of cooperation, and they are supported by several working groups that meets regularly. They don't wait for the formal rounds of these meetings to conclude. Our cooperation has also been underscored by various high-level visits. The most recent visits has been the visit by Prime Minister Modi to South Africa in July 2016, and followed by his participation in the Johannesburg BRICS Summit that took place in July 2018. President Ramaphosa visited India in January 2019 and had the honor to be the chief state guest at the Republic Day celebrations that was held in New Delhi. At the conclusion of the state visit, a 3-year strategic program of cooperation was signed, and this sets out clear objectives within measurable timeframes, how to elevate and fast-track bilateral relations. This is also what we consider the blueprint of the bilateral relations between our two countries. Of course, South Africa and India also participate as leaders of the Global South in multilateral. And we cooperate in a host of international groupings, including the G20, the Commonwealth, the G77 plus China, the NAM, and it's specifically in those international groupings of the South, namely the BRICS, the IPSA, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, that we work very close to promote the developmental agenda of the Global South. As you might be aware, South Africa is concluding its third term as a non-permanent member on the UN Security Council in December this year. And of course, India will take up its seat the beginning of 2021. South Africa and India work very closely in the UN because we are like-minded countries. As I mentioned before, we're both leaders of the Global South. South Africa's focus on the UN Security Council for the past 2 years was specifically to advance the African agenda, and specifically peace and security issues and developmental issues. And discussions are already underway with India to also see how we can continue the work that has been done to ensure that we do not lose the momentum of this very critical part of the international fora. You are also aware, and it was mentioned in the introduction, that the BRICS Summit that was hosted by Russia took place earlier this week. President Ramaphosa participated in this very important forum. And you know, the discussions was around how to strengthen intra-BRICS relations and also to ensure that the relations are mutually beneficial and that it's around the pillars of cooperation that have been identified, namely political, security, economic, financial, social, and the people-to-people relations. We see BRICS as an important structure to also address South Africa's triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And therefore, we view our participation in the BRICS fora very, very critical. You are also aware that the G20 summit is taking place today and tomorrow. It is chaired, of course, by Saudi Arabia. And we expect our leaders to pronounce on the G20 action plan that was adopted in March this year as a response to the COVID-19, and also the financial outfall, and specifically for the developing world that has suffered, and the impact of the COVID and the damaging effects that it will have on their economies. South Africa, of course, is the chair of the African Union this year, and therefore also take up the ambitions and the goals of the African Union whenever we participate in these international fora. South Africa in the G20 is also the co-chair of the Developmental Working Group, and it is our ambition to ensure that the policies and programs that are adopted in these international fora are aligned to the policies and programs of Agenda 2063, which is the development plan for Africa, as well as the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. South Africa also participates as a member of the continent with the programs that has been launched between India and the African continent. And we therefore look forward to the next round of the India-Africa Forum Summit to be hosted next year. It was supposed to be held this year, but unfortunately, due to COVID, had to be postponed. Of course, India also take over the chair of the BRICS next year, which we also look forward to their leadership of this important meeting, as well as when they take over the presidency of the G20 in 2022. We value the initiative that Prime Minister Modi has taken with the India-Africa Forum Summit, specifically as it's also focused in aligning the ambitions and the goals that India has towards the African continent with Agenda 2063. Before I go on to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, I thought it prudent just to quickly give an overview of South Africa's foreign policy priorities, also for you to see in where this priority fits into our own policy objectives. Of course, our main priority is the consolidation of the African agenda. Secondly, to promote the integration of the Southern African Development Cooperation community. Thirdly, to strengthen South-South relations. And this is specifically where relations with India becomes important, because we use our bilateral relations as well as the multilateral mechanisms to create political, social, and economic synergies to address the issues of common understanding and the common challenges of poverty, underdevelopment, and the marginalization of developing countries through the mechanisms and the organizations that I've highlighted before. We also promote cooperation with the North to ensure that we develop strategic partnerships to also advance the needs of the developing world, specifically Africa. We participate in the system of global governance. There also close cooperation with India as we set out to deal with the key issues that both our countries have identified, issues such as climate change, where we work together in the basic group, issues of the promotion of human rights, issues of counterterrorism, issues of sustainable development, the reform of the United Nations, the UN Security Council, and all the other organs, including the World Trade Organization. And then lastly, to strengthen economic and political relations. And of course, we do this in partnership with countries, and there India is a specifically close partner with whom we have a strategic partnership, as I've mentioned before. Now on to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and I have to admit this is a seminar by itself. So what I'll try to do is just to give you a brief overview. I hope this will stimulate a conversation that we can take further because negotiations are still underway. It was unfortunately postponed due to the outbreak of COVID, but I will not nearly address all the issues related to the Continental Free Trade Area in this short period of time. It is, of course, a major achievement, both in scope, promise, and ambition. And President Ramaphosa is referring to the conclusion and the launch of the Continental Free Trade Area as a game changer. The agreement was established at the 10th Extraordinary Summit of the AU in March 2018. It has entered into force in May 2019, and 54 countries have signed the agreement, of which 33 so far have ratified its various instruments. As I mentioned before, it was initially planned to be launched in July this year. The date of launch is now they're looking towards the beginning of 2021. It, of course, presents the African continent with unprecedented opportunities for development, in that it will make Africa the largest common market in the world, with a population of 1.2 billion people and a combined GDP of around $3 trillion. It will boost intra-trade Africa, reignite industrialization. It will pave the way for meaningful integration of Africa into the global value chain and the global economy in general. Just before I go into more detail, just an overview of intra-Africa trade at the moment, and you will also then understand the urgency and the necessity, but also then the enormous opportunities that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area will present. In 2019, the intra-African trade exports were valued at $69 billion, of which it's only 15% of Africa's world exports. South Africa is the main exporter and importer of the intra-Africa trade, which accounts to about 35% of inter-Africa export and 17% of inter-Africa imports. Other countries that are main players are Nigeria, Egypt, Ivory Coast, and Zimbabwe. I also have to mention that South Africa is one of the main contributors and main sources of foreign direct investment into the African continent. Between 2014 and 2018, South Africa invested over $10 billion of foreign direct investment and makes it the 5th largest source on the African continent after the United States, France, the UK, and China. There are also other measures that, they are endless, but just to mention one, the World Bank in its Doing Business Index has a specific score on trading across borders. And the AU members only rated 54.88 out of 100. So just to mention again, we really see the enormous potential for finalizing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The main objectives of the Continental Free Trade Area, of course, is to create a single continental market for goods and services with free movement of people and business people and investments, of course, to expand intra-African trade, and to enhance competitiveness and support economic transformation. The framework agreement covers trade in goods and services, investment, intellectual property rights, and competition policy, and there's also a protocol and dispute settlement. Most of these protocols are in a phase 2 and is estimated and expected to be finalized by December. These protocols also have all established technical committees to support and implement the agreement. And within the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, there are also many other bodies and mechanisms that have been established to support the implementation. Just to mention one, the African Trade Observatory, that will be an information portal to facilitate inter-trade information. I've mentioned previously that Agenda 2063 is Africa's framework for structural transformation. It builds on on the previous structures and continental initiatives to fast-track regional integration. And there are 8 regional economic communities that have officially been recognized as building blocks of the African continental free trade area. I've got a slide just on the projected benefits of a concluded agreement. You can see the gains in employment, in GDP growth, in trade reform. Critical for Africa, a movement away from commodity dependence to value-added production, stimulating regional and continental value change, diversification of the economies of Africa, building industrial platforms and creating new opportunities, and of course, creating enhanced opportunities for South-South trade, where of course would be of interest to our young entrepreneurs. South Africa and the African continent has a demographic dividend. It has a young, vibrant and urban population, and therefore, as you see, our populations almost match, and it should be a major significant development that should be considered by any person that looks toward Africa as a business partner. Before I hand over to Dean, I of course have to mention the vibrant people-to-people relations that exist between our countries. People of Indian origin in South Africa is counted at about 1.2 million people, which is about 4% of our population, and have made a significant contribution to the South Africa story. They have played a major role in the social cohesion of our nation. As you know, the South African people and South African nation is referred to as a rainbow nation because of our country that is so diversified. There are also leaders from this community that have not only played significant role in fighting apartheid and in our freedom struggle, but are continuing to play an important role. And we share, as you can see from the photos, we share so much. We share alike in good food, we share cultural events, we share a love for sport, for music, and also on academic field, there's an annual Gandhi Mandela Freedom Lecture that is also adding, of course, significant value to building the relations between our countries. Lastly, if I speak about people-to-people relations, we of course have to speak about tourism, and I want to take again an opportunity to invite all of you to make sure that you put South Africa on your list to visit. South Africa has opened its borders for international tourists, of course adhering to very strict health and safety protocols. And the Visa Application Center, the VFS, is open. It's receiving applications for tourist visas. So it's definitely looking forward to welcoming everybody to come and visit our beautiful beaches, our mountains, the many World Heritage sites, and of course the cultural sites of significance. You've seen the video that we showed you at the beginning. It's a country to be discovered. We've also taken significant steps to ease the travel to the Indian tourist by launching the Visa Simplification Agreement, and we are also rolling out an e-visa system for India, for the visitors to South Africa. Of course, this year has not been open, and we all deal with the outfall, but as I said, South Africa is open again, and we look forward to welcoming you. The last page, as you will see, is just our contact details. You are welcome to contact us. At the moment, the office is open. We, of course, adhering to the strict protocols, health protocols, but we've not closed the office. We are there, and we look forward also to meeting you and engaging with you. And I now hand over to Dean that will speak in detail about the economic opportunities for the Indian business person and the young entrepreneur when looking at South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrea Kuhn. Hello.
Thank you, Consul
You have
General.
reiterated close ties and people-to-people interaction. And, you know, that is a very important insight for us. So thank you very much. I now request Mr. Hoff to take over.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to reiterate the Consul General's words and thank the Institute for the opportunity of presenting South Africa's position in the global economy and the opportunities and bilateral relationship that we do share with India. In doing so, I'll be presenting a PowerPoint presentation that covers South Africa's opportunities, but also South Africa's recovery plan in terms of COVID, and also some of the sector capabilities that we do possess and where we believe there will be good mutual cooperation and benefits in the future. In doing so, I'd just like to highlight a few fast facts on South Africa. As mentioned earlier, we are a member of the BRICS grouping. We are the second largest economy in Africa after Nigeria. We do have prudent monetary policy in place, which has kept our consumer inflation at 3%, which has also led to a decrease in the current interest rates. So in South Africa now, the banks are lending at a rate of 7% to customers and consumers. In saying that, also it's important to note that South Africa has been the preferred investment destination in the African continent for many of the Fortune 500 companies. And you'll see on the screen that we've mentioned quite a few there, multinationals like Ford, Isuzu, Hitachi, Bosch, Chevron, Sony from Japan, and not mentioning the Indian investors, which I'll like to highlight on a bit later in the presentation. And in setting the platform, South Africa also offers affordable destination in terms of production with a sizable talent pool. So without going into too much detail on that, you'll see that when we compare our total employment costs for doing business with other nations, we actually compare quite favorably. So 14% of your business costs would be in terms of employment, compared to Malaysia, which would be 36%, and Turkey, for example, 22%. In terms of the global pandemic, you'll see that South Africa, as with every other country in the world, was not spared the devastating impact. South Africa did implement one of the most stringent lockdown measures globally in an effort to contain and prepare for the worst of the pandemic. This did give us time to prepare our healthcare facilities. We were fortunate that along with the winter season, the peak of infections in South Africa was towards July, which was later than those countries in the northern hemisphere, such as Spain and France. And despite having a high number of infections domestically, the number of people who were unfortunately succumbing to COVID-19 was relatively low. And that was particularly due to our young population and the healthcare assistance that we did have in place. Notwithstanding the substantial easing of restrictions, currently South Africa is under level 1 restrictions. The rate of infections in South Africa has dramatically slowed and has not shown a sign of increasing, as is the case in the Northern Hemisphere, where we're seeing an increase in Belgium, Spain, France, and the United States. So from peaking at a position of fourth highest in infections globally, South Africa is gradually going down the list, and we now currently rank 11. The pandemic, as is obvious with most countries around the world, did pose and has dealt a major blow to the economy. Part of the measures that were implemented severely disrupted economic activity across the world. The lockdown constrained the movement of personnel and business operations, and therefore spending and productive capacity. International trade in goods and services were severely disrupted, as was the global supply chains and the production as a result of that. Again, another major impact was that on international travel, which, as we know, had a devastating impact on world tourism and the air transport industry. The world economy is now experiencing its deepest peacetime recession since the 1930s Great Depression, with massive unemployment losses, increased poverty, and inequality. Most sectors of the South African economy were completely shut down under Alert Level 5, which was from the 27th of March to April the 30th. We then went into Level 4 from the 1st of May to the 31st of May, and the restrictions imposed were unprecedented demand and supply shocks on the economy, having had a major bearing on consumer spending, production, exports, investment activity, and obviously employment. We saw a real gross domestic production decline of 16.4% on a quarter-by-quarter basis in the second quarter of 2020, broadly comparable to the performance of several of our emerging market peers, with the exception of the agricultural sector, which actually recorded slightly lower output. We also have seen that this has impacted on foreign direct investment and the investment plans of the private sector, which has resulted in the postponement and cancellation of certain investment decisions. Nevertheless, we did see an increase in foreign direct investment in the first 2 quarters of 2020. And as I go through the presentation, I'll also touch on the South African Investment Conference, which actually deals with our objectives and touches on our recovery plan post-COVID. But as we speak, the levels and the economic recovery is starting to normalize. We have seen through high frequency data that key segments of the economy are reflecting a rebound, as is the case in India. Manufacturing output has recovered, with overall output in July and August touching on the levels of that of January, which was pre-COVID crisis. We've also seen that there's been an increase in mining production, as many of you may recognize South Africa as a substantial commodities-based economy. We are now looking at the levels of January, again pre-COVID levels, with a good recovery in mining of gold, coal, and platinum group metals. We've also seen an increase in retail and wholesale trade. And on the external front, mining exports have risen sharply to a level of 160 billion rand. So to put that in perspective, you're looking at around about $11 billion in the third quarter of 2020. In terms of the medium outlook for the South African economy, we expect that there will be a decline in our GDP between 7.5 to 9.5% in real terms in 2020, but we are projecting growth in 2021 in the range of 2 to 4%, with a modest economic growth forecast for the subsequent years. Operating and trading conditions are likely to remain difficult for some time, implying that the recovery will be gradual. Structural challenges will continue to constrain growth potential in the medium term, but these are being addressed by the South African Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which we'll go into in detail. Household consumption is increasing, and as mentioned, our export performance is expected to remain subpar in the short term due to weaker global demand as we wait for our main trading partners to recover. But with that being said, there are export opportunities that will emerge, specifically in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was discussed by the Consul General. Monetary policy is likely to remain positive. So we've just had the last meeting of the year for the Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the South African Reserve Bank, and they decided to keep the repo rate, the rate at which the banks borrow from the Reserve Bank, at 3%. There was no movement down. And according to most economists and commentators in South Africa, this could signal the end of the interest rate cutting cycle, again, underpinned by a relatively low inflation rate of 3%. Touching on the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, I thought it's apt to include a quote by our president, which states that we are determined not merely to return our economy to where it was before the virus, but to forge a new economy in a new global reality. And in terms of our recovery plan, we look to rekindle the economy actively and very aggressively in a manner that ensures sustainability, resilience, inclusiveness, one that focuses on employment opportunities and meets our national objectives of inclusive growth and socio-economic transformation. So when we talk about inclusive growth and socio-economic transformation, what we're referring to is an economy where all levels of skill can be absorbed, and economic transformation, socio-economic transformation means that the economy is not restricted to certain groups of individuals. So for example, by bringing in a lot more female employment and work opportunities across different levels, entry level, management level, executive level, to help and support these opportunities in the economy. The recovery plan is anchored around solid socio-economic compact, which brings together government, labor, and business and the community partners, which will collectively work towards a long-term strategy that should position the economy for substantial economic growth. The plan is divided into phases, with the first phase being focused on the next 6 months on the preservation of current economic activity and livelihoods, again, dealing with the shock and the impact of job losses as a result of the coronavirus. The second phase looks at the period post 6 months for another 6-month period aimed at recovering economic activity and implementing required reforms into the economy. And the third phase, which would be in a year's time, would look at actions targeted at growing and transforming the South African economy further. So if we look at the core elements of the Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, we'll see that priority interventions look at aspects such as infrastructure investment, strategic localization, industrialization, and export promotion. And many of you would be familiar with this as India is embarking on a similar strategy where we're looking at promoting local production to ensure that the manufacturing capability is there. We're also looking at ensuring energy security, which we'll touch on in greater detail, food security, a recovery around the tourism sector. We also have the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program, and as mentioned in socio-economic objectives, gender equality and economic inclusion. So that means bringing in all genders into the economy and all demographics into the economy. Key enablers to restore growth would be macroeconomic framework for fiscal stability, regulatory changes, building a capable state, a strong state that is able to support the growth and meet the demands of a growing economy, Economic diplomacy and African integration. This very much speaks to the work around the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And key to all our interventions has always been a skills development element, where we need to make sure that the workforce is work ready and meets future demands. So an example of this would be training people to be able to implement the electronic and e-commerce sectors of the economy, to make sure that the skills are there so that when the opportunities arise, our workforce can be work ready and take advantage of this. In terms of outcomes, the targets are to achieve secure and reliable energy supply, to create and support 800,000 work opportunities, again addressing the job losses due to COVID, unlock more than 1 trillion rand in investment infrastructure. So if we had to put that in rupee terms, we're looking at an amount of almost 5 trillion rupees. To reduce data costs for every South African and expand broadband access to low-income households. Also to reverse the decline of the local manufacturing sector and to promote re-industrialization through exports. To resuscitate further value in sectors such as tourism, which have been hardest hit by the pandemic. Looking at two specific programs of the recovery plan, I decided to focus on infrastructure development. So in terms of the recovery plan, we are looking at a massive rollout of infrastructure, and that's across all different sectors. So we're looking at energy, we're looking at water, roads, rail, telecommunications, the digital economy, communities, and social infrastructure segments. So following government's approval of the infrastructure investment plan in May of this year, 2020, the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium was held, which presented an infrastructure development pipeline consisting of 276 projects. Collectively, these projects are valued at 2.3 trillion rand, with a funding gap of 500 billion rand, so around about 20% funding gap. Many of these projects in the infrastructure pipeline will be developed through public-private partnerships, and this will present substantial wide-ranging opportunities for private sector investment and participation. And again, this speaks to the social compact that government has in place, where we would collectively work together with the business, labor, community, and government to grow the South African economy. And then also a part and parcel of this infrastructure development would be addressing long-standing constraints in the form of regulatory and policy challenges. So in terms of the enhanced value proposition, we look at the rolling out of infrastructure-ready projects. So here we have 50 prioritized infrastructure projects, with 12 special projects gazetted in 2020, which have an investment value of 340 billion rand. And this is where the private sector will be encouraged to participate, including through PPPs. We're also looking at fit-for-purpose procurement framework to enable infrastructure projects to succeed. So around 1 trillion in new infrastructure investment is expected to be leveraged by 100 billion rand in blended finance with the infrastructure fund that will be put forward for the next 10 years. We're also looking at project preparation, financial structuring, and implementation perspectives with the private sector that will support the capacitation drive currently underway through a specific agency which has been formed under the presidency called Infrastructure South Africa. And the development of these fit-for-purpose procurement projects for infrastructure will provide a conducive environment for infrastructure investment. Sovereign guarantees alongside partnerships with commercial banks, development finance institutions, and strategic infrastructure projects will significantly reduce the risk for investors. And fast-track implementation of these shovel-ready projects that we mentioned will present major opportunities for numerous local suppliers of material and inputs in the South African economy to contribute. So if we look at the graphic, without going into too much detail, you'll see that of the 276 projects in the pipeline, 64 are in transport, 26 are in energy, we have 42 in water and sanitation, we have 7 digital projects. Digital, we're referring to aspects like the broadband rollout. We have human settlements, which refers to housing, 71, and key is also the 54 agro-processing projects. The second big sector of focus would also be energy. As we mentioned earlier, we're striving for energy security. And the reconstruction plan calls for a new energy paradigm, emphasizing the importance of sufficient, reliable, and affordable energy to support economic growth. So the Integrated Resource Plan of 2019 outlines South Africa's strategic plan and roadmap for future electricity generation. And this basically calls for a diversification of our energy basket, focusing on renewable energy. Currently, the dominant energy source in South Africa is that of thermal energy, coal, and nuclear energy. And as the world moves to a greener economy, you'll find that the impact and the importance of renewable energy, it becomes more important, specifically from a sustainability perspective. And if we look at the coal sector's economic importance presently, this is a large issue that needs to be addressed in terms of our imperatives, and this will contribute to economic sustainability. The crowding in of private sector capital and operational participation in energy is indispensable. And the large quantum of global capital from multiple sources in the world can be challenged into the sector. A policy framework to enable self-generation and unbundle Eskom. In terms of Eskom, Eskom is our state-owned electricity utility, which provides more than 95% of our energy needs in South Africa. And with this, we expect to see an enhanced industrial capability and competitiveness within the energy sector and the value chain, as well as the related industrial sectors. So touching a bit more on what the opportunities that present themselves, we have looked at recently an additional 2,000 megawatts of emergency power, which will be unlocked in the next 12 months by means of a risk mitigation power strategy. We have looked at, by 2021, agreements to be finalized with independent power producers to collect an additional 2,000 megawatts from existing and new projects into the grid. We're looking at concluding the framework for the governance of the gas to power industry. Significant investment opportunities will also be found at efficient power transmission and distribution. The public procurement designation program creates opportunities for component manufacturers also to support power generation and energy. So some of the opportunities that we've highlighted will be wind energy, solar, gas and diesel, grid scale electricity, small scale enabled generation, and new thermal coal, which, to be honest, has been a bit of a challenge. Now I'd like to touch on more of the bilateral opportunities and relationships that exist. You'll see that Indian investment in South Africa are broad and well established. We have total capex investment of 25 billion rand with total job creation of over 3,000 people. And you'll see that there's relatively strong investment over the period 2013 to 2020, with an average investment each year varying from around about 200 million rand to around about 673 million rand. And this investment cuts across all different sectors of the South African economy, from manufacturing to education to sales and marketing, IT, and that's mirrored by some of the investments and well-known brands and names that you see in the right-hand side, namely being Wipro, Zomato is present, Cipla in pharmaceuticals, ICICI Bank, Jindal Africa in steel, Mahindra in automotives and tractors and IT, and Tata in automotives and also trading into Africa. From a South African perspective, I haven't highlighted it specifically, but we do have notable investments in the Indian economy. Swiggy has a large investment from a South African company called Naspers, which recently separately listed part of itself in Netherlands under Porus, and Porus is the one that holds the investment in Swiggy. Other well-known brands under the same banner would be OLX and PayU. Besides that, we do have investment in the insurance and financial services sector. FirstRand Bank of South Africa present in the Indian market and able to facilitate trade between India and Africa. In terms of exports to India, we exported 57.3 billion rand of products to India in 2019. And what is striking from the graph is that the majority of these products that we exported were mineral products. And if you recall, at the beginning of our conversation, we mentioned that we are looking at trying to diversify our basket of exports and look at more value-added products. So we are working quite hard at the consulate to try and change this dynamic. And sectors that we have looked at promoting would be automotive parts, the defense sector, where we feel we have strong capability. We are in the global supply chain, and we feel that there would be a lot of complementarities working with India and opportunities for us to pursue. In terms of Indian exports to South Africa, you'll see that the picture is very different, that the basket is more diversified. You have medication in terms of pharmaceutical goods. There are also cars. You'll find petroleum products, nucleic acids and their salts. You also find a bit of rice that's imported. So this is also more of the kind of mix that we should be working towards, which will therefore enable us to balance trade. And in terms of targeting now specific sectors and highlighting opportunities for you, I thought, let me start off with the automotive sector of South Africa. So in terms of our capability, South Africa is the most advanced automotive industry on the African continent. We have several major OEM equipment manufacturers present with operations in South Africa, and they produce over 50% of all of Africa's automotive production. And underpinning this would be the reasons to invest in South Africa. So what we offer is 1 billion market access through different trade agreements that we do have in place with the European Union and the United States. Our sector is well developed. There are 500 tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 suppliers. And OEMs are able to source a wide range of parts and components from the South African market. There is rising demand in South Africa. That is due to a requirement that we put in place in terms of mining equipment. So if we talk specifically to yellow metals there, your dump trucks and your Caterpillar type equipment there, we have seen that this sector in South Africa is growing. And in fact, one of the announcements at the South African Investment Conference was that of a large Japanese automotive company expanding their presence in South Africa by launching new models. We also have a very attractive policy environment in place, and that is supported by government policy in terms of incentives and an open relationship with the automotive sector. So maybe to just highlight a couple of facts and figures there is that we do have 370,000 passenger vehicles sold per year in South Africa, which is 40% of the total demand in Africa. And let me touch here on the destinations for investment in the sector. You'll see that we have 3 key hubs. And in those different hubs, you'll have many of the different OEMs present. So for example, in Roslyn, which is just outside of Pretoria, which is the capital city of South Africa, you have BMW, Nissan, Tata, Iveco. You then have Ford as well in Pretoria. If we look at along the coast, KwaZulu-Natal, which is probably best known province in South Africa due to its strategic relationship and bonds with India, you'll find that we have Toyota and Volvo. And then in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape province, we'll have other well-known brands like Volkswagen, Mercedes, and 4 from China. And the picture on the right is a nice representation of all the components that South Africa manufactures that actually goes into a car. And that demonstrates the point that I mentioned earlier about the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 component suppliers that are all present and able to contribute to the manufacturing value chain that exists in the sector in South Africa. But nevertheless, there are still many opportunities that exist, and we're looking for investment around engines, air conditioning, alarms, tracking devices, body parts, steering wheels. So you'll see that this sector is growing and there are opportunities. And I think something, just an interesting footnote to maybe mention, is that in 2018, South Africans were able to choose from 49 passenger car brands and 3,716 models, providing them with the widest choice to market size ratio in the world. I wouldn't be able to move on without just briefly mentioning the government support that exists for the program. We have the South African Automotive Master Plan, speaks to a plan to 2035. We have national incentives, as I mentioned, according to different segments of the market, the Automotive Investment Scheme, the Heavy and Commercial Vehicle Scheme, people carriers. We also support innovation through the Technology and Human Resources Industry Program. And again, as underpinned by the Recovery Plan, a skills development support mechanism, which aims to support skills development across the sector. And you'll see that skills development is a common theme amongst all sectors of South Africa. Another key sector that's interesting to highlight would be the agro-processing sector, which in itself also offers a lot of opportunity and also forms a large part of the manufacturing sector of South Africa. And in terms of investment, you'll find that South Africa's climate is quite diversified. It's not one climate throughout the country. And you'll see that certain crops thrive in certain areas of the economy. It's very well developed and globally competitive. South Africa exports its fruits globally. In India, we have pears coming in. We have grapes. To the European Union, we also have citrus fruit. And South Africa is one of the largest exporters of citrus fruit globally. And then key sectors would be corn, wheat, sugarcane, vegetables, and nuts. The food and beverage sector is also one of the best performing sectors in South Africa, which is also interesting because that itself also offers opportunities. And you'll see from the screen, without going into detail, that there's plenty of opportunities in food-based operations itself and in non-food-based operations. So there we're looking at nutraceuticals, non-edible oil processing, flax production, anti-malaria medicine. And in support of all of this and the opportunities, we do offer incentives in form of the agro-processing support scheme. And we do have a financial support through a developmental financial institution called the Industrial Development Corporation and the Land Bank of South Africa. Pharmaceuticals is a well-established area of investment from India into South Africa. And I think key to highlight this is that sales have doubled over the last 10 years and are expected to reach 48 billion. That's about $3 billion last year. The country has advanced manufacturing capabilities. And to prove so, I'll like at the end of the presentation to just show one of our recent investments that were announced at the investment conference, speaking about vaccine production in terms of COVID-19 and how we'll begin to export to all parts of the world. We expect this market to continue to grow, and the opportunities are again diverse in terms of manufacturing APIs, developing and manufacturing generics, the supply of telemedicine, speaking to the digital move and capability that we're trying to move towards, biotech and nanotech manufacturing. And you'll find that its activities are across the country. What support exists from our perspective would be financial support, regulatory support, R&D support, and supports in terms of clustering of activities, which also helps to reduce the cost of doing business. I'm wary that my time may have been exceeded, but it's also important to know that underpinning our investment opportunities are special economic zones across the country. Certain of these economic zones are focused to specific sectors. So you'll find that on the on the left-hand side of the presentation, there's a big dot in a big province called the Northern Cape in Uppington, and there you're looking at a green economy zone there. If you look further down towards the Western Cape of South Africa, many of you may know it as a global tourism destination called Cape Town, but just outside of Cape Town, we have a special economic zone called Saldanha Bay, and this is focused on becoming an oil and gas servicing hub to the west coast of Africa. And I'm also pleased to announce that there have been two major discoveries off the South African coast by Total of France of oil condensate. And this in itself could be a game changer. And a lot of that support for those operations would come from that Saldanha Bay oil and gas servicing hub, which itself, again, also presents itself opportunities for engineering and companies in that sector to take advantage of this emerging and brand new industry in South Africa to establish operations there. You'll find that because special economic zones are seen as a catalyst for growth and export-led activities, they are positioned throughout the country in all of the different provinces. In terms of how we actually facilitate and support investment, it's through our engagements with the Invest SA division of South Africa. So we would then help identify the value chain, provide information, provide specialist advisory services, coordinate meetings in terms of regulatory reform and roadmap and highlight the processes. Also, a big part of that would be intergovernmental coordination and facilitation. So introducing companies and investors to the specific role players and agencies that they need to be in contact with. Another important aspect is many countries around the world charge for these type of services, whereas the South African government offers these services of investment facilitation, attraction, and aftercare free of charge. I think in summing up, I'd just like to present a few videos that show some of the highlights of the recent South African Investment Conference. The conference it's in its third edition this year, where we successfully managed to announce investments of 7 billion rand. Our president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, has a target of attracting 1,200 billion rands worth of investment over a 5-year period. And taking into account the announcements from this year, we have exceeded more than 50% of our targets. So all indications are that we're well on the road to achieve our investment targets. And it's also important to note this investment has been across all sectors again. Agro-processing, mining, value addition in mining, automotives, IT, with a lot of data center development and investment taking place. Key investors have been local, such as our telecom operator, but also global, well-known international investors like Amazon Web Services. Other notable investors would be companies like Nissan, for example. So in ending the presentation, I'd just like to play 3 quick videos of the type of investment and the social impact that they have, which actually speaks to the recovery plan that South Africa is trying to implement.
Anglo American is currently working to build a new underground mine beneath its De Beers Group Phoenicia mine in Limpopo, The 30 billion rand investment will extend the life of the Phoenicia beyond 2040 and replace the open pit as South Africa's largest diamond mine. The project is on track to commence in 2022. Over the past 5 years, Anglo American has also invested close to 4 billion rand into mining communities by building critical infrastructure vital for local development, such as roads, health facilities, and schools, as well as supporting over 50,000 jobs. Aspen's world-class facility SVP is well on its way to transforming the Port Elizabeth facility into a globally competitive and technologically advanced sterile platform. With state-of-the-art pharmaceutical technology, SVP will export 85% of products, shifting the business from a local supply hub to an export powerhouse. With a 3.4 billion rand investment, this is the largest ever South African pharma investment in history, and the SVP's facility will be one of the world's leading manufacturing hubs for anesthetic products. The Astral Foods broiler rearing and processing expansion has increased overall capacity by 16%, with 800,000 birds processed per week. The project has also resulted in the construction of 130 poultry sheds, and the festive hatchery has been upgraded. Through transformative partnerships with developing contract grower farms, 248 jobs have been created, with a preference given to previously disadvantaged employees. Annual turnover is expected to increase by 350 million rand.
In conclusion, I would just like to add that the exchange rate between the South African rand and Indian rupee is currently 1 rand is equal to 4.8 rupees. In terms of, for example, establishing a business in South Africa, we normally have a criteria, minimum criteria of investing 5 million rand, which converts to 24 lakh rupees. And then we also have certain other criteria which we evaluate. For example, in terms of national interest, is it going to contribute to the objectives of what South Africa is seeking? And is it going to lead to employment creation? So, for example, if someone wanted to come and establish an auto space shop in South Africa, it would not be encouraged. Firstly, because there's no value addition, and South Africans, that's an easy sector for South Africans to contribute and to establish business in themselves. If someone was bringing a new manufacturing element and was looking at creating 5 or 6 jobs, then we would definitely look at encouraging that type of investment. With that being said, I think we have seen that the exchange rate has also strengthened against the dollar. So South Africa is becoming more competitive and cost effective in terms of international business. And I'd like to end by encouraging everyone to participate and to engage us. And hopefully at the end of the presentation, if there's a few minutes left, once all the dignitaries have made their remarks, I can end with 1 or 2 additional tourism videos to highlight the beauty and the excitement that does await you for your future travels to South Africa. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
You're playing the video, sir?
Okay, I'll play the videos now.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No problem. Just give me a minute. I will get there now.
Welcome to a place that inspires adventure like nowhere else. With 130 adventures and counting, you're sure to find new discoveries around every corner. Welcome to a place where the vastness of our wilderness reserves is matched only by its inhabitants. Here you can walk with the rhino, the leopard, the Cape buffalo, the African elephant, and the majestic lion. Take the plunge alongside the great white shark and the southern right whale.
Visit a place where living life in every moment is a way of life. Feel the passion and excitement of a young nation's heartbeat.
Last one I'm going to do is called Jarrett's. There you go.
Welcome to the birthplace of humanity, where this heritage has sculpted a culture filled with unique expressions. With 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in our borders, this is a nation that embraces and celebrates the diversity of her historical landscape and her people.
Thank you.
Are you done, Mr. Hoff?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff, for this valuable insight into how South Africa is planning to recover its economy post-COVID-19 and strategic priority focus areas to drive long-term growth of South Africa. You have also stressed on Indian investment in South Africa, vice versa. Indeed, there is a vast potential for cooperation. Thank you once again, sir. We now have the Q&A session. So the first question that I want to ask Mr. Hoff, this has come from a faculty member, Dr. Purvi Pujari, and she asks, please elaborate on the opportunities for academic and exchange between the two countries. Hello.
Hello, thank you. If I can ask our Consul General to address the academic question.
Sure, sure, sir. Sure.
Thank you, Dean. I value this question, and I think it's very important also in light of our discussion and engagement today, because it's one area that we have identified as countries that we can do so much more. There is a MOU on track 2 discussions and cooperation that was signed, I think, in 2018, if I remember correctly. So there has been some cooperation between think tanks and NGOs to advance also the understanding of our countries better. I do recall during the 2015 India-Africa Forum Summit, there was quite close cooperation also between the think tanks of India and South Africa, and they actually produced a book on relations between South Africa and India, and we were looking forward to repeat that exercise with the next India-Africa Forum Summit that will be hosted next year. Of course, we also want to encourage closer cooperation between the universities, the colleges, and we've got our work cut out for us. In South Africa, universities are private institutions. So what we can do from our side is definitely to alert them and bring the opportunities to their attention. There are programs of cooperation, but I know it's very specific. It would be specific universities and then specific campuses where they are running specific programs, especially in the science and technology field, because as you know, South Africa and India are very close partners when it comes to issues of science, technology and innovation. I also have to mention that through the multilateral organizations that we are members of, namely BRICS and IORA, there are several initiatives that have been taken by these organizations to promote educational cooperation and advance these cooperation. The ambition was for each of the BRICS countries to establish a seat at one of the universities. And if I recall, the BRICS seat in South Africa is at a university in Durban. Also, during South Africa's chairship of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, we launched an initiative of the Mandela Be the Legacy internship program, which has been active now for the last 3 years. And it is a wonderful memory also to the contribution that President Mandela made as one of the initiators of this very important organization. But yes, I do acknowledge there's much more that we can do, specifically like an institution like yours, because there are similar institutions in South Africa. And it's only when we work together and we share the knowledge and our strengths that we can together tackle the challenges that our communities face. As I said, in South Africa, the issues of unemployment, inequality and poverty that has now been, of course, exacerbated by the impact of the pandemic on our societies.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that answer, madam. Another question that we'd like to ask you is, what do you think are the challenges before South Africa and India for tapping the vast potential that the African continent offers so that the African continent grows economically?
Yes, no, thank you for that question as well. You know, as I mentioned in my presentation, there is very good cooperation between India and South Africa, and also India and the African continent. And it is up to us to ensure that, we don't just leave it to signing agreements and having high-level meetings, but the implementation of these decisions to make sure that the benefit of the decisions that we take and the frameworks that we set out in these organizations, that it achieves what it sets out to do. I've mentioned a few of the highly successful decisions and initiatives that have been launched recently that really has an impact also, because it speaks to the objectives and the priorities of our continent. And I mentioned the Mandela Gandhi Skills Center in Pretoria, which focuses specifically on training specific skill sets in South Africa, because unemployment is a huge challenge for us in South Africa, and it has now been made worse by the COVID pandemic. I've also mentioned that the importance of ensuring that the programs and the initiatives that we take on, that these objectives are aligned to the objectives and the ambitions of Agenda 2063, the blueprint for Africa's development. Because it is important not only that Agenda 2063 is aligned to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals 2030, but it also speaks to the development programs of the African continent and specifically South Africa. So when we ensure that these programs are aligned and we deal with each other as equal partners, we will be successful in also overcoming the specific challenges that we share, as I mentioned, the one of poverty, the one of unemployment and of inequality. So yes, we must continue with the programs that we've set out. The frameworks are there, the political will is there. It's up to us to make sure that the implementation is also there.
If I can also add, I believe also knowledge sharing and just showcasing of opportunities, because South Africa is quite a vast country. You'll find that there could be different opportunities across different provinces, which you refer to as states. Like in India, it's the same. If we don't go visit and experience what a certain state has to offer, we wouldn't really get the opportunities.
Thank you, sir. One more question. You have mentioned about agro being very dominant in South Africa. Here also in India, we have a vibrant agro processing sector. So my question is, what are the opportunities for agro processing industry and also in the manufacturing sector? So what are the opportunities in agro processing industry and in the manufacturing sector?
Thank you. So in terms of let's say agro-processing and manufacturing to a certain extent, I think there's numerous opportunities in the supply chain. So besides actually growing the produce in terms of agro-processing or processing, for example, the fruit into juice or the grapes into wine, there would also be associated opportunities in terms of developing the packaging, doing new green packaging. And even if we extend that thinking, there would be opportunities now in terms of our energy policy to actually do self-generation in terms of energy. So you do have the ability to come work with an existing player in the agro-processing space, whether that be a farmer or that be a processing center or a co-op or a packaging company, and speak to them, for example, about putting in a renewable energy solution to take them off grid. So those kind of opportunities exist. There is land that can be cultivated, so partnering with South African farmers and emerging farmers to produce produce for not only South African consumers, but also meeting the international demand. And there you're looking at produce across the spectrum from, one sector that's not really well developed in terms of South Africa would be legumes and pulses, which India is vastly experienced in and probably the most dominant player globally. So growing those ground nuts in South Africa for processing would be an opportunity. Again, in manufacturing, it would depend what sub-segment your expertise lie, but there is room in the value chain for companies to come, put up facilities or to enter with new technology, globally competitive skill sets, practices. Best practice is always encouraged, and anything that helps to increase the productive capacity in South Africa would always be looked upon favorably.
Well,
Thank you, sir. One of our students
Thank you very much.
wants to ask that what is the procedure to pursue higher studies in the Republic of South Africa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you. Of course, as I mentioned, our universities are private institutions. So the best way is to inform themselves of the specific field of study and then find a university that would meet the criteria. Of course, there is umbrella bodies that deal with these issues, which we can share with them as well. And then as a foreign student can apply to study. There is an allocation at the universities in South Africa for foreign students at each of these universities and colleges and technical institutions. So there are a number of Indian students that are studying in South Africa at the moment. I know there's also colleges that have offices in India to also encourage that students can do part of their studies in India and then do the rest of their studies in South Africa. But I think the best is maybe if they can contact the consulate and we can guide them in terms of where to look and where's the best place to find this information to take up this opportunity. We welcome foreign students. We believe, we need the input of we're a global world, so we need everybody's input. It doesn't help to only focus on your own information base and your own experiences. So there's also an encouragement of foreign students to come and look at South Africa, and there's several fields that we've excelled in the meantime. I know mining specifically, because also based on our economy, the University of Johannesburg and the University of the Witwatersrand, they've got special faculties that have excelled and is recognized worldwide. There's also the University of Cape Town that is specific in the issues of water management. So there are these fields of excellence that, depending on the studies, of course, we can see how we can assist the students.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. The next question is from Mr. Satish K. Saraf. The question is, what are the opportunities available for textile producers in South Africa? India and China being the major producer of cotton and polyester. Brazil is our largest market. South Africa had been on the list and we have some customers there, but are not able to get the demand supply data of textiles from South Africa. To understand better, where does the value proposition lies?
Thank you. So from our side, maybe it's important to mention that we do have what we call a textile master plan. And in terms of the master plan, it's a policy document that looks to as you would have seen in our presentation, work together with industry to promote South African manufacturing of textiles. So to be honest, I would need to further engage on that matter. But with that being said, I do know part of the aspect of the master plan is getting the large South African retailers to commit to local procurement. So if someone is looking at trying to enter into that specific market, there would be opportunities to bring in, for example, raw materials, set up a manufacturing base in South Africa, and then look at engaging the retailers in terms of the master plan. But as it's not a sector that I'm truly familiar with, I do have a sector brochure that I'm happy to share. So I'll be happy to also, engage on that sector offline.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hoff. There's a comment from Mr. Ankit Sarodi, and he says, we'll be surely visiting this beautiful country as a tourist. Enjoyed to know that the various opportunities, and my heartfelt thank fantastic session. So I think that is all for the Q&A session. Can I request Mr. Neil to kindly summarize and give the vote of thanks? Mr. Neil?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Paul. Wow, it was really an awesome session. So at the outset, once again, a very warm afternoon to all the participants, the faculty members who are part of this wonderful international symposium. I think it's a very august group that is attending this session, the educationists, teaching professionals, institutional heads, and of course, entrepreneurs and students. And of course, our esteemed dignitaries from South Africa, Madam Andrea Koen and Consul General of South Africa at Mumbai, and Mr. Dean Hoff, Council Economic and South African Consulate General, Mumbai. In this international symposium on trade, commerce, and educational institutional partnering, bilateral relations, and opportunities. Yes, today on this warm Saturday in India, we are really privileged to have been part of this wonderful session. And I, on behalf of Bharatiya Vidyapeeth Institute of Management Studies and Research, and also representing ABLE, that is Association of Business Leaders and Entrepreneurs, which I represent, being associated with Bharatiya Vidyapeeth Institute of Management Studies and Research for supporting the students, encouraging and developing them to be future entrepreneurs through various learning interventions, symposiums, and entrepreneurial development programs, developing of e-cells. I am really privileged to be associated with the esteemed institution and to be part of this very insightful session on looking at opportunities of business and trade and tourism with South Africa. Oh, what an appropriate time for this symposium to happen when the world is just coming out of this pandemic situation and looking forward to a brighter future of progress post the opening up after this pandemic lockdown, which has affected the world all over in the whole life and economies. So looking forward towards a new horizon of progress for new relationship trade opportunities globally, especially with South Africa, with which India has a close and rich legacy and connect. Yeah, the starting initial video, which was presented, that is presenting South Africa to each of us, was a great beginning of opening South Africa to the world. Madam Andreas, thank you for presenting insightful information about South Africa, about the intra-Africa trade with South Africa as the main contributor to import and export. You shared various initiatives to develop trade and commerce, its benefits, key aspects of people-to-people relation with India. That's very significant. Bringing the two nations together for growth and development. Yes, special thrust and invite for tourism. Yes, visiting South Africa. Oh, the beaches, the cultural beauty of South Africa. Thanks for extending the warm arms of coming together. Mr. Dean Hoff, presenting South Africa, its focus on improving quality of life all across through a beautiful video. It's commendable how well all going through this COVID spread and pandemic, how South Africa has beautifully gone through in managing it and successfully managed in controlling the whole thing. Yes, needless to say, the world, including South Africa, was affected by the pandemic, affecting trade, travel, economy severely. Significant is the South African economy on the road to recovery. Yes, gradually but surely, in spite of the challenges. Sir, you touched upon important qualities of resilience and focus. It's really encouraging to note the optimism with which South Africa is tackling this situation. It is noteworthy, especially to note the South Africa's economic reconstruction and recovery plan, which is rooted on a solid social compact. And I am really delighted to read what President Ramaphosa has said. It's so inspiring and committing. We are determined not merely to return our economy to where it was before the coronavirus, but to forge a new economy in a new global reality. It's really so very encouraging. It is so really encouraging. Further, you touched upon various aspects of the core elements of economic reconstruction and recovery plan, which was wonderfully covered. You showcased the whole canvas detailing about strategic priority focus areas to drive long-term growth. Yes, of course, from the Indian perspective, the Indian investment in South Africa, which was detailed so wonderfully. The automotive sector was really impressive, where South Africa almost produces every part that goes into an automobile. Agro processing was very well touched upon and explained to us. Yes, not less to say about pharmaceuticals, which was also a very important aspect, and also about the special economic zones. Very significantly was the investment opportunities and investment services. It was really a very detailed and enriching session. Finally, of course, sir, the video showcased the technological growth, future and vision of South Africa so beautifully. And of course, encouraging business, tourism, and enjoying the rich natural richness of South Africa. I'm sure you all would have definitely benefited and had a lot of insights and information about South Africa, reaching out to us for trade, commerce, and relationship. I take this opportunity to thank our esteemed dignitaries from South Africa to present South Africa to us so intimately and progressively. I'm sure it will bring India and South Africa more closer in all aspects. Thank you for your valuable time and presenting South Africa to us. Our thanks, of course, to all esteemed participants, faculty members, institutional heads, students, entrepreneurs, professionals. Thanks to all those who have supported this endeavor and making it a great success with over 100 plus participants all across. Special thanks to Bharati Vidyapeeth Institute of Management Studies and Research, its management and team, and all those who are associated with it to bring this wonderful, insightful session to all of us. Thank you all once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Neil, for that very impressive and elaborative summarization of what Mr. Hoff and Madam Kuhn presented. I would like to request all the participants to put their so that we can have a photo session. So can I request all the participants to kindly put their camera on so that we can have a photo session? Thank you very much. Thank you, participants. Thank you, Mr. Hoff. Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. We'd like to have much more interactions, and definitely we also aspire to visit your beautiful country in the near future. So on that note, to remind the participants that the certificates will be posted. Kindly access the link and fill the feedback, which is very essential. And from BVMSR, It's a big thank you to all the participants and our esteemed guest, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Zala?